that they found him. But in the end, they're gonna realize one thing. They didn't find him. Many people search for the truth and never find it. But if you want to know the truth about God, what we gotta do, we got to read the Holy.
Hello, and welcome to the Word of Truth, the cable show that's brought to you by the House of Jacob Bible Study class. And what we do here is work to help you understand what you need to know and what you need to do to gain salvation. As we live in this world, we understand that this world was not created by us, that there is one who has created everything that we see, whether it be the stars, the moon, and all operations, whether it be us and our bodies. And this one who created everything has a plan for man. The plan of man is not just to live and die, but the plan of man is to live, learn something, start to overcome ourselves. And then if we do that according to his word and according to what he's left for us to learn, if we do that and overcome ourselves, we have the opportunity to gain salvation, which is live with the Creator forever. Now, with that said, there's something that we all have to overcome as we start to become better individuals before God, better individuals before our families, better individuals with our community. There's something that we all have to overcome, and that's pride. So the title of this lesson is called Pride Goeth Before Destruction. And again, what we work to teach you are the things you need to know as far as overcoming yourself to be acceptable unto God. So in this lesson, we're going to deal with pride. We're going to deal with what pride is. We're going to look at some examples of pride, and we're going to look at the wages of pride. We're going to look at who were prideful, and we're going to look at the rewards if you are that which is not prideful, if you are humble, if you have humility. So with that said, we're going to start this out at Proverbs 16, and we're going to pick this up at verse 16. Proverbs 16 and verse 16. And when you get there, Brother Brian, please go ahead and read.
How much better is it to get wisdom than gold, and to get understanding rather to be chosen than silver? The highway of the upright is to depart from evil. He that keepeth his way preserveth his soul.
So again, this goes with what I was just speaking on, which is we got some things to overcome. One, you want to gain wisdom over silver and material things. And two, being upright, you want to depart from evil, and you want to keep your soul, meaning you got to overcome yourself. Go ahead.
Pride goeth before destruction, and an haughty spirit before a fall.
Pride goeth before destruction, because this letting us know things about our lives, about our walks. But it's letting us know that pride is something that goes before you are destroyed. Pride cometh before the destruction of an individual. Pride will come before the destruction of a family. Pride will come before the destruction of a community. Pride goeth before destruction. And what else?
Better is it to be of an holy spirit with the lowly than to divide the spoil with the proud.
So pride goeth before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall, meaning that you've lifted yourself up. And better it is to be of a humble spirit with the lowly than to divide the spoil with the proud. So the word of God is letting us know that we don't want to harbor pride, and you don't want to be in confederacy or an association with those who are prideful, are those who are proud. But with that said, let's look at some basic definitions so that way we know that we're all on the same page with what we're speaking about. So we're going to go to the Webster's New World Collegiate Dictionary, and we're going to go to the definition of pride. And when you get to that definition, I want you to read the first, second, and third senses of the word. Every word has multiple senses, which are the alternate definitions. But we want to read the first, second, and third senses of the word pride. And when you get there, brother, go ahead and read.
Pride, an over-high opinion of oneself. Exaggerated self-esteem, conceit, haughty behavior resulting from this arrogance.
So when you're dealing with pride, you're dealing with the overreaching sense of self-importance. Go ahead.
Proper respect for oneself, sense of one's own dignity or worth.
So this one is one of the things that said it's you understand your worth. But all of the other definitions talk about an overreaching sense of self-importance, and that's good. But when you have an overreaching sense of self-importance, then your view of things becomes skewed. Why is that? If you're dealing with pride, then you'll start making your wants to be at the top of what should be addressed. You're gonna make your wants more important than other people's possible needs. When you deal with pride, you're gonna put your wants as most important. When you deal with pride, you're no longer able to view things objectively. You're looking at things subjectively, and what do I mean by that? When you talk about looking at something objective, that means you're looking at it for the facts without your feelings. But if you're dealing with pride, you're starting to look at things subjectively, and what you see and how you view things, our people, our situations, is subject to how you feel as opposed to facts. Hence, you can't deal with somebody in love, because if you may feel a certain way a certain day, and instead of dealing with them in love, you're gonna deal with them according to according to how you feel, which is subjective. So again, dealing with pride, now you're starting to deal with your arrogancy, you're starting to deal with an incorrect sense of your importance. Let's go to another definition, because what we read in Proverbs 16, we also read how you want to be humble. So let's go and we're gonna look at the definition of what it means to be humble. And again, this is from the Webster's Dictionary. And when you get there, Brother Brian, I want you to read the first and second senses of the word.
Okay. Humble. Having or showing a consciousness of one's defects or shortcomings.
Now, humble means that you are conscious of your defects. Guess what? Everybody has defects. So now, you cannot be prideful if you're dealing with humility. You understand where you fall short at. It doesn't matter what you're able to do. You know that you are nothing. You understand that you fall short. Go ahead.
Not proud. Not self-assertive. Modest.
Modest, not self-assertive. You can be humble and understand that there's certain things that are right and wrong. You can be humble and understand that you're not gonna allow put yourself in certain positions to be done for people to do wrong towards you. You can be humble and keep yourself from danger. You don't have to be prideful to stay away from things that are dangerous.
Right.
You don't have to be prideful for, let's say a woman is in an abusive relationship. You don't have to be prideful to leave. You can still be humble, but understand facts. And if there's a fact that you are in danger, you need to remove yourself. But if you're dealing with pride, your view of things becomes skewed. But when you're dealing with being humble, you understand your shortcomings, but that's not to say that you do not look at facts. But when you're humble, you understand your shortcomings. When you're prideful, you have an incorrect self-esteem. Let's go down now. Let's read some more things dealing with pride. Let's go to Proverbs 8 and 13. Because what we're gonna do now is look at what the Lord speaks on concerning pride. Because we are supposed to be seeking the Lord. We're supposed to be trying to gain the Lord. Why? Because we have forever coming. The one who created all this didn't create it just to leave it.
Right.
He has something else that's finna happen, or that's about to happen. He's not finished with his creation. Let's go to Proverbs 8, and let's pick this up at verse 3. Proverbs 8, and let's pick this up at let's go Proverbs 8, and let's pick this up at verse 12.
I wisdom deal with prudence and find out knowledge of witty inventions.
So wisdom dwells with prudence, which is discretion, meaning that you can restrain yourself. Remember, we talked about overcoming yourself. Verse 13, go ahead.
The fear of the Lord is to hate evil. Pride and arrogancy and the evil way and the forward mouth do I hate.
So the fear of the Lord is to hate evil. And what goes with that evil? Pride, an incorrect sense of one's self, and arrogancy, and the evil way and the forward mouth do I hate. So let's look, now we see pride, we looked at what it is to be humble, but now we got another word in here, arrogancy. Let's go and look at the definition of arrogancy because we just want to be on one accord with what we're speaking about. We don't want to look at the word of God subjectively. Arrogancy doesn't mean what we feel like it means. We want to make sure that when we speak about the word of God, we are speaking about it according to what it says, not according to what we want it to say or what we feel like it should say. What is the definition of arrogancy? Can you read the first and second sense of the word?
Arrogant, full of or due to unwanted pride and self-importance. Overbearing, haughty.
Haughty, self-importance. Again, you have an inaccurate sense of self-importance. You have a sense of self-importance that's actually overreaching. And that's not what you want to deal with when you're talking about serving God. Because if you feel like you're important, what's to say that your brother is, you're starting to say that other people are less important. And that's not how we should be when dealing with the word of God. Now let's go, because we're going to look at some more things that people actually do because of pride. Let's go to Proverbs 10. We're going to go to Proverbs 10. And we're just going to look at some things that we as men will do because of pride. Proverbs 10, and let's pick this up. Proverbs 10, and let's pick this up at verse 4. Actually, let's go to Proverbs 13. Let's go to Proverbs 13, and let's pick this up at verse 10. Proverbs 13, and let's pick this up at verse 10. And when you get there, Israel, please go ahead and read.
Only by pride cometh contention.
Okay, so only by pride cometh contention. So when you're dealing with contention, when you're dealing with people at odds, somebody may not have necessarily been at odds with you, but now you're starting and you're enforcing some sort of contention or some sort of confrontation with somebody. That shows that you are dealing with pride. You're going to enforce some sort of conflict. That's showing that you are dealing with pride. So pride will instigate confrontation between people. Let's go to, I had Proverbs 10 and 4, but it's actually Psalms 10 and 4. Let's go to Psalms 10 and 4. Because we're going to see what else pride does. So pride will have you in contention with your brother. Why? Because when you're prideful, what you say is important. And if what you say is important, that means that you're going to try to argue with people, make them see your point, as opposed to humbling yourself in certain circumstances. Let's go to Psalm 10. No, this isn't Psalm 10. Mm-hmm. Psalm 10, and let's pick this up at verse 4. Psalms 10. In fact, let's pick it up at verse 2. Psalms 10 and verse 2.
The wicked in his pride doth persecute the poor. Let them be taken in the devices that they have imagined.
So in pride, people persecute the poor. Instead of just letting them live, instead of just doing what they can for them, they'll persecute them. See, that's why you ain't got nothing. That comes from pride. So if you start seeing yourself starting to push away the poor or push away those who may be less fortunate than you, that means you're starting to deal with pride. And we see that the Lord said, the word of God tells us that that the fear of the Lord is to hate pride. Mm-hmm. But if you starting to put people down because they don't have this and that, you dealing with pride. Just like I've heard in some churches, they'll put people down because they don't have a nice car. That's not how you do. That shows that that person is dealing with pride, which means that that person is dealing with something that is against God. Mm-hmm. The wicked in his pride does persecute the poor. Let them be taken in the devices that they have imagined. Verse 3.
For the wicked boasteth of his heart's desire, and blessed the covetous whom the Lord abhorreth.
So the wicked boasteth what he want to do, and he blessed those who covet. That's why you have ministries that only teach about you following what you want, what you're coveting after. Because these people are following things that are opposite of God. These people are actually showing their fruits, which shows that they are wicked. Verse 4.
The wicked through the pride of his countenance would not seek after God. God is not in all his thoughts.
The wicked in his thought, the wicked through the pride of his countenance will not seek after God. We have people who have degrees and PhDs and have spent their lives learning things, but they will not seek after God. You have an entire the entire theory of evolution. We're not saying that there's certain traits can't be passed down from father and from previous generations. That's clear that certain physical traits can be passed down. But to use evolution to say that none of this was created shows how these people are wicked and don't seek God.
Yeah.
All of this stuff that we see has working order. The sun, the moon, our seasons, the stars, the birds, the bees with nature, our own bodies show working order. But the wicked have conspired to say that this working order didn't come from anything. In their theory, they will disregard facts. Like if we look at this objectively, because we talked about objectively and looking at facts, even this creation. If a person was to take, and this is an analogy for something like they say the Big Bang just happened by itself. If a person takes a bunch of car parts and puts it in a box and puts 50 bombs on it, they can blow that box up as many times as they want, they will not get a working car. But if you get somebody who has some intelligence, who knows how to work on vehicles, if you have that person come and you give him all the parts to make a car, guess what? In time, you're going to have a working car.
Right on.
That's facts. That is, the scientific method is that you have to have a repeatable experiment that shows the same result. Guess what? If you get somebody who knows how to build a car, I can show you a repeatable experiment where this person will continually make a car. But if I grab 100 atomic bombs and put all the pieces of a car together, I could blow that thing up as many times as I want, and I will never get a working car. The Big Bang will never develop what I need. It will not create working order. Working order doesn't come by chance, but the wicked have tried not. You know, God is not in their thoughts. So they will try to exclude God. They will try to exclude his intelligence. They will try to exclude his knowledge. But the wicked, in their pride, don't seek God. Instead of humbling themselves and realizing, we're not smart enough to figure this out.
Right.
But I see the evidence that somebody else did. Let's go down to Proverbs 11, and let's pick this up at verse 2. Proverbs 11, and let's pick this up at verse 2. And when you get there, Israel, go ahead and read.
For lo, the wicked bend their bow. They make ready their arrow upon the string, that they may privately shoot at the upright in heart.
Proverbs 11 and verse 2.
I'm sorry, I said Psalms.
Oh, no problem. Proverbs 11, and let's pick this up at verse 2.
Okay.
Yeah, I made the same mistake. That's why I had Proverbs on for that Psalms 10. Proverbs 11, and let's pick this up at verse 2.
When pride cometh, then cometh shame, but with the lowly is wisdom.
Sooner or later, if you're in pride, if you're dealing with pride, sooner or later, shame gonna come. Look at the governments today. I don't kick against the governments of this world. I don't kick against the governments. But if you look at the people who are set in positions, you can see where in their pride, they sooner or later, that shame done came. I don't care if they're Hollywood movie stars. I don't care if they're basketball stars. I don't care if they were the presidents of the United States or any presidents or kings. Sooner or later, through pride, shame will come. Let's look at some biblical examples of what happens when people started dealing with their pride. Let's go to Daniel 4. Let's go to Daniel 4, and we're going to pick this up at verse 1. And what we're going to see in Daniel 4, we're going to look at Nebuchadnezzar, who was the king of Babylon. But he did something in his pride, and the Lord had something come on him. Let's go to Daniel 4, let's pick it up at verse 1.
Nebuchadnezzar the king, unto all people, nations, and languages that dwell in all the earth, peace be multiplied unto you. I thought it good to show the signs and wonders that the high God hath wrought toward me. How great are his signs, and how mighty are his wonders. His kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and his dominion is from generation to generation. I, Nebuchadnezzar, was at rest in mine house, and flourishing in my palace. I saw a dream which made me afraid, and the thoughts upon my visions of my head. Therefore made I a decree to bring in all wise men of me, that they might make known unto me the interpretation of the dream. Then came in the magicians, the astrologers, the Chaldeans, and the soothsayers. And I told the dream before them, but they did not make known unto me the interpretation thereof.
So nobody could tell the interpretation thereof, but now we have a servant of the true and living God, the one who we proclaim to you, the one who actually created all of this. Your body, the intelligence that's in the creation of your body, the mechanics of your body, the plumbing of your body, the electrical of your body, the processing of your mind, the one who created all that. He's the God who Daniel served, and the Lord is going to show Daniel some things concerning this dream that Nebuchadnezzar had. Go ahead.
Verse 8. But at the last Daniel came in before me, whose name was Belteshazzar, according to the name of my God, and in whom is the spirit of the holy gods. And before him I told the dream, saying, O Belteshazzar, master of the magicians, because I know that the spirit of the holy gods is in thee, and no secret troubleth thee, tell me the visions of my dream that I have seen, and the interpretation thereof. Thus were the visions of mine head and my bed. I saw, and behold, a tree in the midst of the earth, and the height thereof was great. The tree grew and was strong, and the height thereof reached unto heaven, and the sight thereof to the end of all the earth.
So this is the dream he's having. Go ahead.
The leaves thereof were fair, and the fruit thereof much, and in it was meat for all.
So this tree was flourishing, beautiful, bearing fruits, greater than all the trees. Go ahead.
The beasts of the field had shadow under it, and the fowls of the heaven dwelt in the bowls thereof, and all flesh was fed of it. I saw in the visions of my head upon my bed, and behold, a watcher, and an holy one came down from heaven.
So now Holy One coming down from heaven. Go ahead.
He cried aloud and said thus, hew down the tree, and cut off his branches, shake off his leaves, and scatter his fruit.
So now this tree that he done seen in his dream is being torn down by the Holy One of heaven. Now let's go down to verse 24, and we're going to see what this is.
This is the interpretation, O king, and this is the decree of the Most High, which has come upon my Lord the king.
So there's something that came upon the Lord the king that Daniel done shown him. Now let's go back to verse 22.
It is thou, O king, that art grown and become strong.
So that tree represented the king. Go ahead.
For thy greatness is grown, and reacheth unto heaven, and thy dominion to the end of the earth. And whereas the king saw a watcher and an holy one coming down from heaven, and saying, hew the tree down and destroy it, yet leave the stump of the roots thereof in the earth, even with a band of iron and brass in the tender grass of the field, and let it be wet with the dew of heaven, and let his portion be with the beasts of the field, till 7 times pass over him.
Go ahead.
This is the interpretation, O king, and this is the decree the Most High, which has come upon my Lord the king, that they shall drive thee from men, and thy dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field, and they shall make thee to eat grass as oxen, and they shall wet thee with the dew of heaven, and 7 times shall pass over thee, till thou know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men, and giveth it to whomever he will.
So now, the king is being told that the Lord is finna smote him and have him driven with the beasts of the field. But let's see why this is gonna happen. Let's go to verse 12. Because Nebuchadnezzar done been warned. But let's see what Nebuchadnezzar still let come in his heart. Let's go to 4, and let's pick it up at verse 29. Daniel 4 and verse 29.
At the end of 12 months, he walked in the palace of the kingdom of Babylon. The king spake and said, is not this great Babylon that I have built for the house of the kingdom by the might of my power and for the honor of my majesty?
So now he's glorifying himself. This is pride. He done been warned that you finna be chopped down. He done been warned. He done acknowledged that Daniel deals with the true and living God. But after 12 months, man forget.
Yeah, it do.
And he walking around, he looking and he like, yeah, this is me. Ain't nobody even there. He ain't even saying it to nobody. He just like, yeah, this is me. It's all me, baby. I done did this, and let's see what happens. What does the Lord say? What happened with the Lord?
Verse 31.
While
the word was in the king's mouth, there fell a voice from heaven saying, O King Nebuchadnezzar, to thee it is spoken, the kingdom is departed from thee. And they shall drive thee from men, and thy dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field. They shall make thee to eat grass as oxen, and 7 times shall pass over thee until thou know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men and giveth it to whomsoever he will.
So the Lord smote him. He was just sitting there, he was just talking to himself. And while the word was in his mouth, the Lord smote him. That shows that your pride ain't got to be on display for everybody else. You could be prideful in your heart.
Yeah.
And the Lord will cast you down. But we're just looking at some of the examples of what happened to those who were prideful. Let's look at another example, because this happened to Nebuchadnezzar, but let's see what his son did, what his son Belshazzar did. Let's go to Daniel 5 and let's pick it up at verse 1.
Belshazzar the king made a great feast to 1,000 of his lords and drank wine before the 1,000. Belshazzar, whilst he tasted the wine, commanded to bring the golden and silver vessels which his father Nebuchadnezzar had taken out of the temple which is in Jerusalem, that the king and his princes, his wives and his concubines might drink therein.
Now he's doing something that his father didn't deal with. This one Belshazzar, if nothing else, he should have known about Daniel and about the true and living God. But he gonna sit there and pump himself up, and he gonna show in pride, bringing out the vessels of the true and living God for his own entertainment. Go ahead.
Verse 3. Then they brought the golden vessels that were taken out of the temple of the house of God, which was at Jerusalem, and the king and his princes, his wives and his concubines drank in them. They drank wine and praised the gods of gold and of silver, of brass, of iron, of wood, and of stone. In the same hour came forth fingers of a man's hand and wrote over against a candlestick upon the plaster of the wall of the king's palace.
So while he's sitting there good and lifted, they've been drinking good, they partying, they shaking it up and shaking it down. And now while he's sitting there, and you know how you get them times when you're at a party and seem like things get kind of quiet and you just looking around. That's probably about the time that he was at in the party. He been drinking and now he looking around just like, yeah. And now this hand out of nowhere start floating and writing something. And I know he gotta be sitting there looking at the hand and then looking around seeing who else see this. He gotta be. We just painting the picture. It's probably got little torches, nice lighting for back then, whatever. Nice little torch lighting. They drinking, they kicking it. People dancing. They probably got the musicians, whatever. And now he's sitting down like he in VIP, drinking. And now he see a hand just floating. He like, what in the world? Let's go ahead and keep reading.
End of 5. And the king saw the part of the hand that wrote. Then the king's countenance was changed, and his thoughts troubled him, so that the joints of his loins were loosed, and his knees smote one against another.
He was terrified. His knees started smoting together. He's sitting there and he started shaking because he know what he see. This ain't like, I'm just a little bit too lifted. He know that he see a hand writing with no body attached to it.
Yeah.
And he know this ain't right. He see it, and he know this ain't right. Let's skip down to verse 11.
There is a man in thy kingdom in whom is the spirit of the holy God.
Now, after this that happened, Belshazzar, he's calling out to his astrologers, saying, what is this that I done seen? Because he's scared. He is terrified at this point. And he's calling out to see who can tell him what this is. Go ahead.
And in the days of thy father, light and understanding and wisdom, like the wisdom of the gods, was found in him.
So now there's somebody telling him about Daniel. Go ahead.
Whom the king Nebuchadnezzar, thy father, the king, I say, thy father, made master of the magicians, astrologers, Chaldeans, and soothsayers. For as much as an excellent spirit and knowledge and understanding, interpreting of dreams and showing of hard sentences and dissolving of doubts were found in the same Daniel, whom the king named Belteshazzar. Now let Daniel be called, and he will show the interpretation.
Now let's go down to verse 16.
And I have heard of thee, that thou canst make interpretations.
So now they done called Daniel, and now Belshazzar is letting him know, I done heard of you, that you can make interpretations. Go ahead.
And dissolve doubts. Now if thou canst read the writing, and make known to me the interpretation thereof, thou shalt be clothed with scarlet, and have a chain of gold about thy neck, and shalt be the third ruler in the kingdom. Then Daniel answered and said before the king, let thy gifts be to thyself, and give thy rewards to another. Yet I will read the writing unto the king, and make known to him the interpretation.
So Daniel wasn't covetous. He wasn't on none of that. He was like, hey, I'm here to do my job. Let me know what's going on. I'm going to pray and deal with my God and try to let you know what's happening. Go ahead.
O thou king, the Most High God gave Nebuchadnezzar thy father a kingdom and majesty and glory and honor.
So now he's running down the history. I done told your father, I know what happened with your father. Let's go down to verse 20, because he's going to let Belshazzar know what actually happened before him. Verse 20.
But when his heart was lifted up.
When his heart, Belshazzar's father's heart, Nebuchadnezzar, when his heart was lifted up, what happened?
And his mind hardened in pride. He was deposed from his kingly throne. And they took his glory from him. And he was driven from the sons of men. And his heart was made like the beasts, and his dwelling was with the wild asses. They fed him with grass like oxen, and his body was wet with the dew of heaven, till he knew that the Most High God ruled in the kingdom of men, and that he appointed over it whomsoever he will.
So the Lord broke down your father to help him understand who he truly is, who God truly is. But now what it's going to say about his son, verse 22.
And thou, his son, O Belshazzar, has not humbled thine heart, though thou knewest all this.
Belshazzar has not humbled his heart, though he knew what happened with his father. So that means that he's dealing in pride here. So now we about to see what's about to be proclaimed, and what sentence has been cast on Belshazzar because he did not humble himself, because he walked in pride. Go ahead, verse 23.
But has lifted up thyself against the Lord of heaven. And they have brought the vessels of his house before thee. And thou and thy lords, thy wives and thy concubines have drunk wine in them.
What it say? Your lords, your wives, your concubines, which is your side pieces, everybody done drunk out of these holy things. Go ahead.
And thou hast praised the gods of silver and gold, of brass, iron, wood, and stone, which see not, nor hear, nor know. And the God in whose hand thy breath is, and whose are all thy ways, hast thou not glorified. Then was part of the hand sent from him, and this writing was written. And this is the writing that was written. Mene, mene, tekel upharsin. This is the interpretation of the thing. Mene, God hath numbered thy kingdom and finished it.
So your time is up. Go ahead.
Tekel, thou art weighed in the balances and art found wanting.
He looked at you some more and you still ain't have nothing to come. Go ahead.
Perez, thy kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. Then commanded Belshazzar, and they clothed Daniel with scarlet, and put a chain of gold about his neck, and made a proclamation concerning him that he should be the third ruler in the kingdom.
But ain't finna be no third ruler in his kingdom. Go ahead.
In that night was Belshazzar, the king of the Chaldeans, slain.
At that night he was slain. Ain't no more kingdom of the Chaldeans, because now it's turned over. Ain't no third ruler. That's it. But all of these things happen due to these people's pride.
Mm-hmm.
And don't think the Lord changes. So even now, the Lord is looking at these governments of the earth and whether or not they're dealing with pride, arrogancy, and this evil. But when their time has come and when they've been numbered, then that means that their time is up.
That's right.
And sooner or later, their time is going to come.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we're trying to teach you what you need to do to gain salvation, because the time of these nations is going to be over.
Mm-hmm.
Let's keep reading. Let's see another example of somebody dealing with pride. Let's go to Acts 12. And let's pick this up at verse 1. Acts 12, and let's pick this up at verse 1. When you get there, brother, go ahead and read.
Now about that time, Herod the king stretched forth his hands to vex certain of the church, and he killed James, the brother of John, with a sword.
Now, James, the brother John, was killed, and if you actually read your Bible, you know that James and John, their mother came to Jesus and asked, can one of my sons sit at thy right hand and the other on thy left? And Jesus let them know that that's not mine to give. And then he said, do you know, can you drink of the cup that I've drank of? And Jesus took of that cup of death. And they said, yeah. And now we seeing one of them actually having to take of that cup. And we can propose that other one had to take of that cup as well. So James, the brother of John, was killed. So he done tasted of the cup that he said he could taste of in front of Jesus. Verse 3.
And because he saw it pleased the Jews, he proceeded further to take Peter also.
He like, oh, they like that. All right, let's get another one going. Mm-hmm. You know how politicians do. They hop on the bandwagon. Yeah. Go ahead.
Then were the days of unleavened bread. And when he had apprehended him, he put him in prison and delivered him to 4 quaternions of soldiers to keep him, intending after Easter to bring him forth to the people.
Now, if you look up the word Easter here, it's not the Easter with the bunny rabbits. If you look up the definition and where this word Easter came from, it came from the word Pascha, which means Passover. So don't get this Easter confused with bunny rabbits and stuff. Verse 5.
Peter therefore was kept in prison, but prayer was made without ceasing of the church unto God for him.
Uh-huh.
And when Herod would have brought him forth, the same night Peter was sleeping between 2 soldiers, bound with 2 chains, and the keepers before the door kept the prison.
So he done bound Peter also, but now Peter is going to pray and he's going to get out of this situation. But let's read something else that happened with this guy, Herod. Let's go down to verse 18.
Now as soon as it was day, there was no small stir among the soldiers what was become of Peter.
Because the Lord delivered Peter out of that prison. Go ahead.
And when Herod had sought for him and found him not, he examined the keepers and commanded that they should be put to death.
Uh-huh.
And he went down from Judea to Caesarea and there abode. And Herod was highly displeased with them of Tyre and Sidon. But they came with one accord to him, and having made Blastus the king's chamberlain their friend, desired peace, because their country was nourished by the king's country.
Uh-huh. So they had their politician who could talk to them, because all of this stuff, nothing's new under the sun. They talking to one of his boys, saying, put in a good word for us, so that way, you looking at us okay, so that way we can have this relationship again where y'all giving us something. Mm-hmm. So it's nothing new under the sun. They doing the same thing back then that people are doing now. But go ahead and read.
Verse 21. And upon a set day, Herod, arrayed in royal apparel, sat upon his throne and made an oration unto them.
So now he's making a speech. He done got all dressed up. He making sure he look right. He making sure he's sounding right. Go ahead.
And the people gave a shout, saying, it is the voice of a God and not of a man.
So now these people exalting Herod like he a God. And he ain't saying, I am no God. They exalted him as a God, and what happens?
And immediately the angel of the Lord smote him, because he gave not God the glory. And he was eaten of worms and gave up the ghost.
But he was eating the worms, and the Lord killed him right there. Why? Because of his pride. Pride will have the Lord destroy a person. And that's what we're trying to teach everyone to stay away from, things such as pride. Now let's look at some examples of humility. Let's go to 2 Kings 20, and let's pick it up at verse 1. 2 Kings 20. And let's pick this up at verse 1. 2 Kings 20 and verse 1. And when you get there, Israel, go ahead and read.
In those days was Hezekiah sick unto death. And the prophet Isaiah, the son of Amos, came to him and said unto him, Thus saith the Lord, set thine house in order, for thou shalt die and not live.
So now we looking at a situation with King Hezekiah, because we about to look and see what happens when you humble yourself before the Lord. Go ahead, verse 2.
Then he turned his face to the wall and prayed unto the Lord, saying,
So now go ahead.
I beseech thee, O Lord, remember now how I have walked before thee in truth and with a perfect heart, and have done that which is good in thy sight. And Hezekiah wept sore.
So he done wept sore. He done humbled himself. He's begging the Lord and beseeching him, and he's humbling himself. Now let's see the conclusion of this. Let's go to 2 Chronicles. 2 Chronicles 32. 2 Chronicles 32, and let's pick this up at verse 24. 2 Chronicles 32, and let's pick this up at verse 24. And when you get there, Israel, go ahead and read.
In those days Hezekiah was sick to death, and prayed unto the Lord. And he spake unto him, and he gave him a sign.
So this is just building on what we read with 2 Kings. This is just the same account from a different angle. And Hezekiah is praying to the Lord, and we know he cried to the Lord. But now what's going to happen?
But Hezekiah rendered not again according to the benefit done unto him, for his heart was lifted up. Therefore there was wrath upon him and upon Judah and Jerusalem.
So he had actually got a little proud too. But let's see what happens. Go ahead.
Notwithstanding, Hezekiah humbled himself for the pride of his heart.
Oh, so Hezekiah started to humble himself, and what happened?
Both he and the inhabitants of Jerusalem, so that the wrath of the Lord came not upon them in the days of Hezekiah.
Go ahead.
And Hezekiah had exceeding much riches and honor, and he made himself treasuries of silver, and for gold, and for precious stones, and for spices, and for shields, and for all manner of pleasant jewels. Storehouses also for the increase of corn and wine.
So
and oil.
the Lord allowed Hezekiah to increase. He was supposed to die. But as we can read in other places, the Lord gave him another 15 years because he humbled himself before the Lord. So this is an example of how even in this flesh, the Lord will give you life and give you safety when you humble yourself before him. Let's go and see what else the Lord talk about when he deal with the humble. Let's go to Isaiah 57. Let's go to Isaiah 57. And let's pick this up. Let's pick this up at verse 15. Isaiah 57 and verse 15. And when you get to Israel, go ahead and read.
For thus saith the high and lofty one that inhabiteth eternity, whose name is holy.
Now, who is this high and lofty one that inhabiteth eternity? We know that that's God. We know that that's the one who done created all that we see, all that we look up at, all that we are. This high and lofty one who inhabiteth eternity, whose name is holy. What does it say?
I dwell in a high and holy place, with him also that is of a contrite and humble spirit.
So he dwells with one who is of a contrite and humble spirit. We know that that's talking about, that this one is talking about Jesus. But what else does it say?
To revive the spirit of the humble, and to revive the heart of the contrite ones.
So now the Lord is ready to revive those who are humble and those who are contrite. The Lord is ready to be there for those who do not deal with pride. The Lord is ready to help them out. Let's look further at what the Lord thinks about this pride. Let's go to Proverbs 6. Let's go to Proverbs 6, and we're going to pick this up at verse 16. Let's pick this up at Proverbs 6 and verse 16, because we're going to look at some more what the Lord thinks about this pride. Proverbs 6, and let's pick this up at verse 16. And when you get to Israel, go ahead and read.
These 6 things doth the Lord hate. Yea, 7 are an abomination unto him.
So now this is talking about 6 things the Lord hates. And there's a 7th one that's an abomination. Let's pick this. Let's see what's at the top of the list. Verse 17, go ahead.
A proud look.
A proud look. Mm-hmm. A overreaching sense of oneself. A proud look is at the top of the list of something that the Lord hates. Go ahead.
A lying tongue.
Uh-huh.
And hands that shed innocent blood.
Uh-huh.
And heart that deviseth wicked imaginations. Feet that be swift in running to mischief.
These are all things that the Lord hates. Feet that be swift to run into mischief. A heart that deviseth wicked imagination. Verse 19.
A false witness that speaketh lies.
Uh-huh.
And he that soweth discord among brethren.
And he that soweth discord among brethren. But then we also read that through pride cometh contention.
Mm-hmm.
Through pride, you can sow discord between brothers. And through pride, the Lord said that at the top of the list, that that's what he hates. We got to stay. These are things that we have to conquer. We got to conquer our false sense of self.
Yes, sir.
Our false sense of self-worth. An overreaching sense of self-worth. Like you're more important than somebody else. Mm-hmm. We were all created by God. Mm-hmm. And we have to learn to walk in that mindset. We're not saying that if somebody that you be around, that you be just around somebody who's trying to do evil to you, you still look at things objectively and stay safe. Mm-hmm. But as far as being prideful, like you're better, are belittling others because they may have less, that's out of order. Are trying to find something wrong with somebody else, that's out of order. We have to be humble, which means that we acknowledge our shortcomings.
Right.
Isaiah 23, and verse 1. And we're going to see something that the Lord is going to do to people who are prideful. We're going to see something that the Lord is going to do. In fact, this is something that he's going to do to all the pride that is in the earth. Isaiah 23. And let's pick this up at verse 1. Isaiah 23, and let's pick this up at verse 1. And when you get there, Israel, go ahead and read.
The burden of Tyre. Howl, ye ships of Tarshish, for it is laid waste, so that there is no house, no entering in. From the land of Shittim, it is revealed to them.
So now the Lord is talking about the destruction of a land, but this is really pointing to something greater. And we're going to see that this can actually be applied to any nations that are out of order, dealing with pride against the true and living God. Verse 2.
Be still, ye inhabitants of the isle, thou whom the merchants of Zidon that pass over the sea have replenished.
Uh-huh.
And by great waters the seed of Sihor, the harvest of the river, is her revenue, and she is a mart of nations.
Uh-huh.
Be thou ashamed, O Zidon, for the sea hath spoken, even the strength of the sea, saying, I travail not, nor bring forth children, neither do I nourish up young men, nor bring up virgins.
So this is all talking about the destruction of this place that we know as Sidon, Sihor and Tyre, and this is the destruction of this place, of this nation. Go ahead.
5. As at the report concerning Egypt, so shall they be sorely pained at the report of Tyre.
So all these things are talking about the destruction of this place, Tyre. But what does it say that the Lord is doing? He's destroying it, but what else has the Lord done? Verse 9.
The Lord of hosts hath purposed it, to stain the pride of all glory, and to bring into contempt all the honorable of the earth.
So the Lord is showing that he's destroying this place, but this is just a shadow of what he's going to do in the earth, period, which is the Lord of hosts hath purposed it. Has purposed what? He has purposed to stain the pride of all glory. All people who prideful, all people who got glory in themselves, the Lord has purposed to stain all of it, which means bring it to nothing. Mm-hmm. Let's go to, we're going to look at the kind of pride, that they are better, or they are more than others. And we're going to see who you really following when you deal with that pride. Let's go to Isaiah 19. Hold on, is this right? Let me make sure. I'm sorry. Let's go to Isaiah 14. 14, and let's pick this up at verse 5. 14 and verse 4. Let's pick this up at 14 and verse 4. Because we're about to look at the one who truly has exhibited pride against God. Isaiah 14 and verse 4. And when you get to Israel, go ahead and read.
That thou shalt take up this proverb against the king of Babylon and say, how hath the oppressor ceased? The golden city ceased.
So this is similar to what we read over in Isaiah 23, where you had another nation that the Lord is about to destroy. Go ahead.
The Lord hath broken the staff of the wicked and the scepter of the rulers. He who smote the people in wrath with a continual stroke. He that ruled the nations in anger is persecuted, and none hindereth. The whole earth is at rest and is quiet.
Why? Because the Lord has destroyed these prideful nations. But let's skip down to verse 10.
All they shall speak and say unto thee, art thou also become weak as we? Art thou become like unto us?
Now this is talking something greater than a nation. And the Lord gonna show you what he's talking about. Verse 11.
Thy pomp is brought down to the grave, and the noise of thy vows. The worm is spread under thee, and the worms cover thee.
So we see the Lord talking about these nations, but now he's talking about worms covering you. And the Lord is really talking to the one who's behind these nations. But who is it who's behind these nations in their pride and in their glory that the Lord is going to stain and bring down? Who is it behind these nations who is the chief one who exhibits pride? Verse 12.
How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning?
O Lucifer, son of the morning, is the one who's behind all of this pride in these nations and these governments and these people. Go ahead.
How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations?
What did he do, though?
For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God.
Oh, he done exerted an overreaching sense of self-importance.
Yeah.
I'm going to exalt myself above God. I'm going to set myself in the mount of the congregation. Go ahead.
I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I would be like the Most High.
So now that's as much of an overreach as you can get.
It sure is.
He done made himself to be like the Most High. So when you are starting to have an overreaching sense of self, you are following Satan and his example. And that's what we're trying to teach everyone, including ourselves, to stay away from. Things that will get us cut off, because we know the end of Satan. We know what's going to happen with him. Let's go ahead and read some more. Let's go to John. 1 John 3. 1 John 3. And let's pick it up at verse 8. 1 John 3 and verse 8. And when you get there, Israel, go ahead and read.
He that committeth sin is of the devil, for the devil sinneth from the beginning. For this purpose the Son of God was manifested, that he might destroy the works of the devil.
But what kind of things was the devil doing? He was trying to exalt himself up there with God. So that we see you following sin. But Jesus and the Lord came so that way we could get away from those things and be redeemed if we choose to change. Go ahead.
Whosoever is born of God doth not commit sin, for his seed remaineth in him. And he cannot sin because he is born of God. In this the children of God are manifest, and the children of the devil. Whosoever doth not righteousness is not of God, neither he that loveth not his brother.
So now we seeing what kind of things you got to have and what kind of person you have to be if you're going to be a follower of God. Go ahead.
For this is the message that ye heard from the beginning, that we should love one another.
So now we got to deal with love. And in love, we're not going to have pride, because now I'm not looking at another person as if they're less than me. Or you're not looking at another person as if they're less than you. Go ahead.
Not as Cain, who was of that wicked one, and slew his brother. And wherefore slew he him? Because his own works were evil, and his brothers were righteous.
You look to kill your brother, to make your brother less than you through these things when you following Satan. Let's go to Colossians 3. And let's pick this up at verse 2. Colossians 3 and verse 2. And this will be it, because these are the things that we actually got to follow. We see what pride does. Mm-hmm. It causes contention. It causes strife. Right. Pride is a sense of overreaching sense of self. We see the things pride did. We see what people got killed because of pride. We see that because of pride, Satan was lifted up. So when we follow pride, we following Satan, and we cannot do that if we're going to gain salvation.
That's right.
But what things do we need to follow if we are to gain salvation, if we are to live in a way that's pleasing unto God? Let's go to Colossians 3, and let's pick it up at verse 2.
Set your affections on things above, not on things on the earth. For ye are dead, and your life is hid with Christ in God.
So we got to set our affections on things more than just ourselves and what we want. Go ahead.
When Christ, who is our life, shall appear, then shall ye also appear with him in glory. Mortify therefore your members which are upon the earth. Fornication, uncleanness, inordinate affection.
Inordinate affection. You may have an inordinate affection for yourself in that pride. Go ahead.
Evil concupiscence. And covetousness, which is idolatry.
Covetousness, what you want, as opposed to looking at what should be. Go ahead.
For which things' sake the wrath of God cometh on the children of disobedience, in the which ye also walked sometime, when ye lived in them. But now ye also put off all these: anger, wrath, malice, blasphemy, filthy communication out of your mouth. We got to
get away from these things if we're going to gain salvation. Go ahead.
Lie not one to another, seeing that ye have put off the old man with his deed, and have put on the new man, which is renewed in knowledge after the image of him that created him, where there is neither Greek nor Jew, circumcision nor uncircumcision, barbarian, Scythian, bond nor free, but Christ is all and in all.
When you put away those evil things, go ahead.
Put on, therefore, as the elect of God, holy and beloved, bowels of mercies, kindness, humbleness of mind, meekness, long-suffering, forbearing one another, and forgiving one another. If any man have a quarrel against any, even as Christ forgave you, so also do ye.
So we got to forgive one another, and we have to walk in humility and be humble, because pride only leads to destruction. And if we're going to put off those old ways, that means we're going to put off our inordinate or our overreaching sense of self. And we're going to humble ourselves and see that we are on the same levels with all of our brethren who are trying to gain the Lord. So we hope you understood this lesson. We hope that you work to get away from pride and overcome yourself and gain the Lord. And please join us again on this television show and tune in with us on www.thehouseofjacob.org to learn more of what you need to do to gain salvation. Peace in Jesus.